Hello, my rubber hearts. Today's episode is truly special. We are sitting down with someone whose life has touched nearly every corner of the rubber world, from the heart of industrial labs to the halls of academia. Professor Jacques Noordermeer is a name many of you already know, but I want you to meet the person behind the science. Born just after World War II in the Netherlands, his story is shaped by curiosity and an unwavering love for science. So grab your tea because we're about to explore what it means to build a life in rubber from the ground up. Hello, Jacques. Thank you for having us here today. I would like to start with my first question. You were born in the Netherlands in 1947, just after the Second World War. What was it like growing up in a country rebuilding itself during that time? And how do you think that post war atmosphere shaped your way of thinking about science and materials?
47 was just 2 years after the war was over. But this country basically was in ruins, particularly in the area where I came from in the West. And grown up in if I say a modest, not a real poor, but a modest family. I mean, I was not used to too much luxury. But anyway, it helped me to survive and gave me some persistence to achieve what I wanted to achieve. Science was not in the front of my mind when I was still a young boy. So I only learned that by the time I went to university, and that was about 20 years later. So it doesn't really go back to the 47s. But in the 70s, when I was studying, 60s, 70s, the country had pretty much picked up. And as a matter of fact, as a student at Delft, I had a fabulous time, and it really shaped me into a scientist, to have an interest in the why questions for everything which was happening around me. Yeah.
Did the sense of resourcefulness and reuse around you as a child influence the way you later approach research or problem solving?
I came from a very modest, very not well-educated family, I may say so. With due respect, I mean, I still love my father and mother. But again, it gives me the persistence to dive deep and find out what is happening and why does it happen the way it does. Yeah. If you call that science, okay, go ahead.
When did the chemistry first get your attention? And what was there a moment in your youth when you realized that you wanted to understand how materials behave?
Chemistry was part of my high school education. And at that time, most of my students, most of my colleague students, how do you call them, always said, "Oh, chemistry difficult. I mean, we don't like it." But the funny thing is, I did like it, and I had a good relationship with my chemistry teacher as well. So the choice to go for chemistry after my high school was sort of an automatic, not knowing what I was getting into, because honestly speaking, after 2 years, I had to sort of feel, but gee, why did I choose that? But that seems to be quite normal for students. So I came over it, and at the end, it was probably the best choice of my life, apart from my wife.
Fair point.
Yeah.
How did your early studies there open the path toward polymer science?
During my studies, say in the late 60s, early 70s, the late 60s, DNA had just been discovered. And proteins, their three-dimensional structure and their functionality depended on, there was very specific for those polymers. Huh? And therefore, from my studies, which were biochemistry in the beginning, actually I got involved in polymers in an attempt to characterize them and describe them in a better way. And from that, actually, I go into the polymer field. Eventually got an offer to do a PhD in biopolymers, but during that actually go into the common polymers, which also were at that moment in pretty big development. And yeah, as a matter of fact, at a certain moment, you are so deep in it that there's no way to get out of it anymore. And, I love it till the day of today. Couldn't be worse.
How did your time as a PhD student at Delft shape the kind of scientist you became?
No, that was my first experience basically in doing research on my own. They let me very much go on myself. And I think after all, I've been, whether it's accidentally or intentionally, I don't know, pretty successful with my PhD. And therefore, basically developed my abilities to go in depth and always ask the why question. As you will see, some of my students always also say in the report or in what's in the journal now, that the why question was always very important for me. And it still is till today. I mean, I don't take the phenomena for granted. I always try to understand why they are the way they are.
I always annoyed my colleagues with, yeah, but why?
And many actually shrug their shoulders and say, well, oh yeah, so what? As long as it works. But that is not my style.
After finishing your doctorate, you went to the University of Wisconsin to work with Professor J.D. Ferry. What drew you to that opportunity?
Do you know the name Ferry?
I did not know it before. No.
Have you ever heard of the WLF equation?
No.
Williams, Landau, and Ferry?
It's from him?
That's a world-known, very essential equation applicable to the processing of polymers. Everybody in depth, with no in-depth knowledge of polymers does know about the WF equation. Now, my professor, my supervisor during my PhD, actually was a good acquaintance of this Professor Ferry, and Ferry offered him a postdoc position. At that time, it was called research associate. The word postdoc did not exist yet. Offered him a postdoc position for a student of him. And I still remember, maybe it's nice to tell, but he came to my desk and said, yeah, I've got here this offer from Ferry. I think the only candidate which I have is you. Would you be willing to go? And I said, yeah, Ferry, hello. But I have to ask my wife. I'll talk to her tonight. And then he said, no, I want to know it now. So I said, well, may I still call my wife? Yeah, you may. So I called Betty and asked her opinion. And she said, well, yeah, let's talk about it tonight. I said, no. I have to give the answer now. And I'm Betty still thankful, and I cannot express my feelings about it. That's with some reserves. He said, okay, no, let's say yes then, and see what happens. And well, honestly speaking, this Professor Ferry was such a nice, motivating person. So, and secondly, our time in the United States was so great that it really shaped us, me as well as her.
When you returned to Europe, you chose to move into industry. What inspired that decision?
The word inspiration is not so much a different issue. At that time, I mean, we talk in the middle of the 70s, job opportunities were not that good. I mean, when I started my studies, they were very good, but these things go up and down. And at that moment, actually, it was a bit down. So there was no chance to get a position at the university anymore because I had been away from the country too long. People had started to forget me. And, I applied for 6 positions at industries, and I got 6 job offers after all. And then, I just took one, which gave the best salary, admittedly, which was the General Electric Plastics at that time. And that's how I got involved in industry. But the General Electric Plastics company in Bergen op Zoom, it's on the west side of the country, was actually a subsidiary of the larger General Electric Plastics of the United States. After 4 years, I had about seen it. As a matter of fact, it doesn't have much depth. It was just a production side, sales side, with a little bit of technical service, which I was involved in, but it did not really turn me on. I applied for a job at DSN, which was at that time the most scientifically oriented company in the Netherlands, and I immediately got a position there, and that's how we switched.
Later, at DSM Elastomers, you became involved with EPDM rubber research and led international R&D teams. What did that stage of your career teach you?
At General Electric Plastics, that company was basically a sales organization, a marketing organization. They were super good in marketing, so I got a very good sense of marketing. At DSM, I was actually plunged into real in-depth research. At least I got the opportunity to do so. Although later on, I became responsible for the development and the research basically on EPDM rubber, which is just only one rubber out of that large collection of different rubbers, about 7% on the worldwide scale. But with responsibilities for research on 4 different places on the world. Here in Geleen, in Holland, in the United States, in Baton Rouge, close to New Orleans, in Triunfo in South Brazil, and also a plant in Japan. So that gave me the possibility to travel all over the world, visit customers wherever, and also, as a matter of fact, to manage research on the different sites from a DSM perspective, which was at that time very much in depth.
How did working in different countries influence your outlook on collaboration and innovation?
Now, it was not always easy. May I say that?
Yes.
Different cultures, different ways, and some of them, as a matter of fact, didn't really like the sort of supervision I did from the Netherlands. Netherlands, small country, particularly if you, for example, go to the United States, they don't even know where it is on the globe. Let be that you come there and say, well, why shouldn't you do this or should you do that? Well, I said, I make it more negative than necessary. But learning to get along with all those cultures, with all those different mentalities, yeah, it takes a certain skill,
Yes.
yeah, flexibility. And I don't know whether it's my mentality, born in mentality, or that I just learned over time. But I was so successful. Yeah, I wouldn't say 100%, but I managed. Yeah.
In the mid 1990s, you moved back into academia at the University of Twente. What motivated this transition?
Now, yeah, it more or less, it happened more that it motivated me, in the sense that in the 90s, the Netherlands had the idea to become the leader in polymer research from an academic point of view, in collaboration with the Dutch polymer industry. And Holland had many, Netherlands had many polymer companies, or at least companies involved in polymer applications, polymer research. For example, the Shell company, the Axo company, the Philips company, and DSM, for example, also very large polymer related companies. The Dutch government actually wanted to build it out further and actually set up the so-called Dutch Polymer Institute, which was money spent for academic research, paid for half of it by the Dutch government. 1/3 of 1/4 came from the companies involved, and 1/4 came from the universities involved. And they actually made sure that all the aspects of polymer technology, thermoplastics, thermosets, but also rubber actually would be involved at that in that system. Now there was no activity on rubber at that time in the Netherlands, except for me standing out at DSN as a rubber specialist with scientific background. So they came to me and said, what about starting a rubber group in Twente University, which was next door to the Vredestein Tire Company. It was on walking distance. So, and yeah, why not? So I went to my boss and said, okay, I got this offer, and what about going there for 1 day in a week? And then spend the other 4 days with my regular job. And my boss said, yeah, why not? It's a good opportunity, a good advertisement also for the company. Let's do it. And so I started. But 5 years later, I had 5 PhD students already with my 1 day in a week. And as a rule of thumb, you need 1 day of work per week for 1 PhD student. So I would, as a matter of fact, I would need 5 days for my 5 PhD students. Now, thanks to my management experience, which I had built up, I still managed, but I was at the end of possibilities, and there were still another 5 waiting. So the question is, do I step out and leave it to somebody else? Or do I just leave the company? So I did the latter thing. I left the company, although they kept me for 2 days in the week as a consultant. So the 1 day became 3 days, and that is how I continued working till my retirement.
When you began mentoring students, what did you discover about yourself as a teacher?
I think I was a good teacher. I happened to be a good teacher. People, I had good interaction with students. I still remember my professor in the time that I was a student. If you wanted to speak to the professor, you had to make an appointment. And then I would say, Thursday, 2 weeks from now, between 3 and 3:30, you can speak to him. And for me, I was always available, of course, if I was available. But anyway,
So you had a good relationship.
I had a very open, very easy relationship, and that's basically what I heard from all the students. That they very much liked that. And the second thing, they always said that I was able to make difficult things, easy to understand for some reason. But that's again my why mentality. If you know why things are the way they are, you know how to explain it. But if you don't know, you can make a very complicated story about
Yes. How did your students influence the way you thought about research and the future of rubber technology?
Now, yeah, rubber technology has often been considered as a bit of a old-fashioned,
Practice.
practice. Yeah, people, rubber technologists, they would just mix things and didn't know what they were mixing. And by the way, just waiting it and see what's coming out. And again, with my always asking the why question, that was not satisfactory. So it helped me and it forced me, also towards my students, to teach them to ask the why questions. And therefore, I forced myself, as a matter of fact, to come with understandable answers. And again, I think I may say that at the end, I succeeded in doing that. And yeah, that had, my times at university did help me with that. And I greatly enjoyed it.
You have built long-standing collaborations with universities abroad, especially in Thailand. How did that partnership with Prince of Songkla University begin?
In 2003, I'd been active in Twente then for 7, 8 years already. In the beginning for 1 day and later on for 3 days in a week. I got a Professor Nakason from Thailand to visit me. And apparently he came with a sort of question which I had a bit of a difficulty to understand at that time. He was asking for a partnership for cooperation on academic rubber research. Now, if I may go a little bit back in history, historically, Malaysia the Dutch Indies, presently called Indonesia, and Ceylon, present Sri Lanka, India, were the three main locations where natural rubber was grown. So these countries had an historic background in rubber and also in doing some rubber research. But that had changed because at that moment there was a drive, particularly in Southeast Asia, to go away from natural rubber plantations and go for palm oil. So many of the plantations were cut and replaced by palm oil plantations, and particularly in Malaysia, to a lesser extent in Indonesia. But other countries stepped in, amongst others, Thailand.
Okay.
And the point was they had little or no academic background. And this Nakason, as a matter of fact, he wanted to set up a natural rubber, or at least a rubber education in Thailand, but was looking for partners, and implicitly asked me to help. So he offered me a visit to Thailand, and that's what I did. Looked around and I happened to have an opening for a postdoc at that time, and I met one of his PhDs at that time, Kanika Sarakao, and I offered her the postdoc position. She was with me for a year. We went back, and since then we have been very, very good friends. And till the day of today, we have cooperated. And in retrospect, I've done 8 PhD students for Thailand, and they are all now in academic positions, at very good academic positions, from professors till assistant professors.
So you grew the rubber scientific community, or at least how I set it up.
I helped a lot with it, because after all, it is apart from the movie, about 8 PhDs in all those sorts of positions today, from here out in Thailand. Is now if I look back at it now, I realize it's quite exceptional. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not nothing. No. Over the years, your research focus evolved. What made you turn your attention towards recycling and the cross-linking of rubbers?
Now, a deeper realization that all this rubber, which is vulcanized, cannot be used anymore for anything else. The only thing at least 20, 30 years ago we could do with it is throw it in an oven and burn it. And it is, as a matter of fact, waste of valuable material. But in order to make it valuable again, into useful again, that's a major problem.
Yes.
But it gave me a very uneasy feeling till the day of today.
What was happening in the field at that time that convinced you this was an important direction to pursue?
Again, an emerging concern about circularity, sustainability, which at the moment, talking the 90s, actually came up in everywhere in society. I mean, everybody started to talk about it. Before that, everybody basically that was never an issue. But then, it became common sense to discuss those matters.
Outside of your professional life, how do you unwind after long periods of research or teaching?
Not really. Honestly speaking,
You never take a break for research.
I've never really stopped. I mean, people would say to me, you're retired now, how do you like it? And I usually say, I have not noticed yet. I mean, once rubber, always rubber. You can never get away from it. And I still love it till the day of today. Yeah.
Do you have any specific hobbies that you like to practice?
One of my hobbies is playing piano. And I've done it my whole life, and on a reasonable level. and for the rest, I'm gardening. But that is a genetic aberration, which I earned from my father. He was a gardener, good profession. So, but still, yeah. And traveling, if you may call that a hobby.
Looking back, what moments feel most defining to you as a scientist and as a person? And what do you hope people will remember most about your contribution to rubber science and to the students you've guided?
Yeah, no, the moments, the major steps in my career or in my life, you may say, is the shift from a marketing-oriented company to go to a research-oriented company, and then later on to switch to academia. I've seen it from all three sides, and yeah, that gave me a very good sort of an equilibrium view on the aspects of the different sides of techniques, and yeah, basically also I think is that it is that which students recognized in me as a person who knows a bit of everything in that respect, and that they love that to be with me as students. Yep.
What a journey, my rubber hearts. I hope you felt as inspired as I did by Professor Noordermeer's path, how he moved between industry and academia, across continents, and still stayed grounded in the joy of discovery. If his story stirred something in you, maybe a memory or a dream of where your own rubber journey could go, I would love to hear about it in the comments. And don't forget to tune in next week when we dive into the invisible structure that gives rubber its strength. Until then, stay curious and stay bouncy.